You are listening to The Breakfast Show here on Faith FM. Joined by myself, Lawson, got Dr. Dan in the studio and on the phone, none other than Dr. John Ashton. John, how are you going this morning?
Yeah, good, thanks, Lawson.
Dude, I am so keen to talk about today's topic.
Are you craving this topic?
I'm craving it. I'm craving to hear all about cravings, particularly in the area of food, because look, I'm gonna be real. I like food. And sometimes I eat too much, and sometimes I might eat the wrong thing. But, you know, it's because my body really felt like, hey, I really want to eat that. I really want to either eat that or I really want to drink that. You know, I really want to drink that can of Sprite. Give us some understanding. What is going on here? Why does our body do this? Actually, just before we jump into it, you know, because our mind works in this way, right? To call us to eat things that aren't necessarily good for us or to drink things that aren't necessarily good for us. I had a coach one time who said, you know, I wish, because ultimately it gets into the stomach and it's not good down there. And I had a coach at one time who said, you know, I wish your stomach could punch your brain in the face, you know, like to sort it out for all the bad, you know, because it has to bear the consequences for all the bad decisions that your brain makes. But hey, look, let's jump into it head first. How can we understand what are cravings? Where do they come from? How do they operate? And why do they affect us?
And are they a good thing or not?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so just looking at this from a scientific point of view, there are probably 4 classes of cravings that occur. Mm-hmm. So 4 different domains that affect our body.
Uh-huh.
And so I'll try and cover just briefly these in this topic. So I remember when I was a little boy, I must have been less than 8 years of age at the time, and I was listening to the radio and they advertised Penguin ice creams, right? So this was a new chocolate-coated ice cream that came out on a stick. It cost 7p, which was fairly expensive, like a fish was 9p. So reasonably expensive, and I remember it sounded so good the way they were advertising this on the radio to this little 8-year-old boy, that I pestered my mother, and eventually she said, well, okay, if you do some chores for me and go and go down the shop and get some things, you can buy one of these ice creams. And so that was how my mind was affected by this picture that was created as a little boy. Now, that's one type of cravings, and it's an immature type of craving, but it does affect us. We're affected by advertising that affects our brains, creates a desire in us. So that's sort of perhaps we could say a psychological craving, because I'd never tasted this thing before, right? But
sure.
I mean, it did taste nice. It was certainly a luxury item back then.
Yeah.
Because, ice creams and that sort of thing were generally for just special occasions.
Yeah.
Now, another area that is fairly common and we often hear talked about is, and people make jokes about it, is women craving chocolate. Now, there's a reason for this, and this can particularly be at the end of their monthly cycle. What happens is at that particular time, dopamine levels drop within the body, and so this is a level that is related to our feelings of balance, of sort of emotional balance and this sort of thing. And chocolate is actually very high in magnesium. It's a very, very good source of magnesium. It's also at that time a very good source of iron as well. The iron in chocolate tends to be quite bioavailable for women. And so magnesium, however, is a precursor for the body to produce sufficient dopamine. So there is actually quite a biochemical association, nutritional biochemical association. Of course, all these ingredients come from the cocoa, and so you really chocolate to get the maximum benefit. If you're eating, say, a standard milk chocolate, which is only about 10 to come a lot of the associated
The sugar in the milk.
but chocolate also, sort of, so, the old saying, so many seconds on the lips, so many months on the hips sort of thing. But quality dark chocolate, of course, is the answer to that. Chocolate is also a source of a feel-good chemical called phenylethylamine.
Okay.
This is a compound that actually helps us feel good, and hence the association of chocolate with romance and courting and this sort of thing. So these are real biochemical, these are real nutritional chemistry factors that are underpinning this craving. So these cravings are good in a way.
So
and
you're
it's
saying
good
that,
to satisfy these.
Okay, this is my question. It's good to give in. And like this should be
to certain cravings. Yes.
Well, I'm thinking particularly as a husband who loves my wife. Like I'm actually doing well by her biological, chemical, brain, gut connection. I'm doing well by her by feeding her chocolate
once a month.
John is
you
like,
might earn more branding points if you do it more often than that. But anyway, awesome. No. But I think it's good to recognise that, and good dark chocolate is good. Chocolate has many other benefits. Cocoa can help reduce blood pressure, for example. It's a source of many other good nutrients, very high in antioxidants, heart protective, a lot of good things are coming out, but of course a good quality chocolate. And of course the best way to get it is from cacao, buying the cacao powder, making yourself a cacao drink, and that's a good way to get these benefits. Now, some very interesting research has also come out of the Charles Perkins Centre at the University of Sydney. So this is an elite medical research centre associated with the University of Sydney.
Okay.
And it's interesting, the director of the centre, Professor Stephen Simpson, has done quite a bit of research in the area of nutrition and cravings. And he's come up with a concept, what he calls nutritional geometry. Now, you won't read about this in the popular stuff, but because this is sort of at the moment in the research level journals.
Okay.
But essentially, the research that is done is showing that essentially we have a basic need of protein. Now, in the in the food world at the moment, we know protein is taking off as if you want to sell something, bung protein in it. So we've got breakfast cereals with extra protein, and probably
it used to be
with
fat
extra
free.
protein.
It used to be no MSG, and this is the next in the line.
Yeah, this is a new one. But one of the interesting things that has come out of his research is that we need protein to build the body structures as the cells get replaced and so forth. So we need a certain minimum amount of protein. And essentially, if we're not getting that in the foods that we eat, we will crave food in order to get more protein. And so what happens is, we have we need a balance of protein and carbohydrate. So carbohydrates essentially provide our energy, so we can do a lot of work. We do that. Now, we need protein. Of course, in the olden days when women washed by hand on a scrubbing board, men chopped trees and dug coal mines by hand, and dug coal out by hand, dug trenches. We need a lot of energy, right, to do that. And that's why generally people are quite slim, because we didn't get enough energy. We didn't, we needed all the food that we could get for energy. But with our more industrial lifestyle, with all our labour-saving devices, as we call them, we have an issue now that we can, eat too much energy food. Now, if we're not getting enough protein, we will desire food until we get enough protein.
Really?
So that's if we're eating a lot of carbs, like, Coke and chips and these sort of foods that are low in protein, we can keep eating, because we need this amount of protein. And what he found was that when he fed the diets of, he did this with sort of small animals, like rats and also with insects, that if he fed them low protein diets, they would eat and eat and eat until they reached the level of protein that they required. If he put them on a higher protein diet, then they ate less till they came back to the curve, to the level that they needed of protein.
Wow.
And hence this term nutritional geometry, because he plotted the data and it would be a zigzag curve around the median line, the balance line of the protein carbohydrate ratio that you needed. So that's a very interesting thing there underpinning that. The other one was
I'm just wondering, for us today, is it then that can we apply that into our diet immediately and say, hey, I can kick the cravings, for those who are desperate for a sugar fix or a big, carbohydrate fix or whatever it may be. It's if they're regularly eating, higher amounts of protein, then they won't have that, internal struggle or fight.
Well, it should help. There are other factors that I'll talk about in a moment, but no, that's right. And so that's why it is important to eat, high quality foods. Now, generally the foods that are going, that are, eating a lot of just high pure carbohydrate foods, will generate these cravings. But most foods have quite a bit of protein in them. Like even potatoes have, 7% protein. Wheat and grains are up where around 10, 12, 14% protein, and then you've got your legumes. So generally eating whole foods, right, rather than the foods that have been split up where the proteins and so forth have been separated out. If we have the whole foods, and dietary fibre helps with satiety. So there's satiety factors as well that come in. Sure. But generally, having sufficient protein and so concentrating on foods that are high in protein, making sure that we're getting, sufficient legumes in particular, some nuts, if we eat meat or fish, and having good meals of those with vegetables. And vegetables, remember, have a lot of fibre and water in them. And so having, your cauliflower, your greens, and remember too that lettuce has more protein per calorie than meat. So filling up and eating quite a lot of greens, is a good way to get your protein, eating a lot of greens and very good quality protein too in a lot of these eggs, these sort of things. These are the foods that have our high protein. Now it's important. A lot of people go to the other extreme, just having protein. We need to remember that it's quite fascinating the way God set this up, that we need certain carbohydrates to enable, for example, the proteins to have access to certain parts of the body. Like, for example, our brain needs certain protein components that we call amino acids, and in order for those to become bioavailable in the brain, we need certain carbohydrates. And so that's why a combination of your protein foods with carbohydrate foods is a good thing to have together, and hence a balanced meal. So the balanced meal of the traditional protein dish with some vegetables is a good way to go, and avoid lots of cakes and biscuits and fries and these things. One of the reasons why there's a lot of awareness now that what they call the highly processed foods are not so good for us. These are foods that tend to be high in fat and salt and sugar, and so fat and sugar have virtually no protein in them. But these are foods that can stimulate pleasure in the brain. So this is a different mechanism. So this involves, again, foods that stimulate pleasure through the taste buds, and they then create a craving through a mental stimulation, right, where we have this pleasure response. We eat this food, we get pleasure, and therefore we crave to have that pleasure again, like fresh fries or whatever, or sweets, chocolate cake, all these sort of things. So that's a different mechanism again. And the way of overcoming that mechanism, the important way is to sort of embrace the feeling, that really nice chocolate cake, but I'm not going to have that chocolate cake because it's not good for me. So you've got to take a logical approach. And the sad part is that some people are better at this than others. So some people have much better control over this, and this is just related to personality type. We're getting into a complex area there. But they're the different types of food cravings, and
so some of them are helpful for a balanced diet.
Yeah, awesome.
But some of them are not good.
Some of them are helpful, some of them are not. But John, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some insight into a really important topic that, and I feel like I'm leaving, and I think many people will leave hearing this interview and going, oh, I can actually, restructure what I eat to help me to feel better and to be eating appropriate amount of food.